Somewhere around the year 800, an emperor issued an order, not a military order, not a declaration of war. He sat down and wrote a list, 94 plants, vegetables, herbs, roots, perennials. And he sent that list to every estate under his rule with the simple instruction: we wish to find all sorts of plants in the gardens. That emperor was Charlemagne, and that document, known as the Capitulare de Villis, is one of the oldest surviving records of intentional, layered food cultivation in European history. But here's what nobody talks about: the people who actually fed themselves during the Middle Ages, the peasants, the monks, the cottage dwellers. They weren't working with acres of farmland. Most of them were working with a small enclosed patch of ground, a few square meters next to their walls, a courtyard, a ledge, and some of them fed their families from it. This video is about how they did it, and how you can replicate the exact same system on a modern balcony. We're talking about 20 kilograms of food from 2 square meters. That's not a trick. That's not a sales pitch. That's what happens when you stop thinking like a modern gardener and start thinking like someone who had no other choice. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you'll see your balcony, or your windowsill, or that forgotten corner of your yard completely differently. Let's go back. In medieval Europe, almost every cottage had some form of a garden. We know this not from romantic paintings, but from legal records. English county court documents from the 12th century onward routinely listed gardens alongside land and property. A historian named Teresa MacLean, who spent years researching medieval English gardens, found evidence suggesting that small productive plots were nearly universal for rural households. Not decorative, not ornamental, functional. The term they used was hortus, the enclosed kitchen garden, and the logic behind it was completely different from how we think about gardening today. Modern gardening, the kind you see on YouTube, the kind sold to you by every seed company and garden center, is based on a monoculture mindset. One plant per row, rows separated by walking paths, everything replanted every single season. It's efficient for large-scale machinery. It makes no sense for a balcony. Medieval growers didn't think in rows. They thought in layers. Above the ground, climbing plants, vertical vines, things that used walls and trellises as their scaffolding. At mid-height, leafy greens, herbs, dense-growing vegetables. At ground level, root crops, low-spreading plants that covered and protected the soil. And underneath, perennial root systems that came back year after year without being asked. This system, which ecologists today would call a guild, wasn't invented by medieval peasants. It predates them by centuries, but they perfected it out of necessity. Think about it from their perspective. You have a small walled space next to your house. You have no store to buy food from. You have no chemical fertilizer. You have no way to water with a hose. You have mouths to feed. What do? You use every inch of vertical space. You plant things that help each other. You never leave soil bare. And, crucially, you plant things that come back every year so you're not starting from scratch when winter ends. That last part is the one modern gardening almost completely forgot. For a medieval gardener, a perennial plant wasn't just convenient. It was survival insurance. Once established, it fed you, every year, without needing to be replanted, without needing to fight for space. It just grew, and you harvested from it. Plants like lovage, sorrel, skirret, good King Henry, called poor man's spinach. These appear directly in historical records of cottage gardens across Europe. They weren't exotic, they were the foundation, and they're almost completely absent from modern gardening culture. If this kind of forgotten knowledge is what you come here for, drop a like, and if you haven't subscribed yet, this is a good moment to do that. Every video on this channel goes deep, and this one is just getting started. Let's build this garden. 2 square meters, a standard balcony railing, some containers, a wall. Here's the first thing to understand. 2 square meters of horizontal space is not actually 2 square meters of growing space. Once you start thinking vertically, that number multiplies. Medieval growers instinctively used what permaculture practitioners today call the 7 layers of a food forest, scaled down to their available space. You don't need a forest to apply this logic. You need a wall and some containers. Layer 1. The ground. Your containers and raised boxes sit here. This is where your root crops live. Carrots, beets, turnips, radishes. Also where you anchor perennial clumps, plants that will still be feeding you in 5 years while everything else comes and goes. Think. Egyptian walking onions, sorrel, established herbs like thyme and sage. These don't need much depth. They don't need much attention. They colonize their space and hold it. A single square foot of container space planted with dense root vegetables can yield, according to data from the Rutgers University Agricultural Extension Program, approximately 680 grams of potatoes or multiple harvests of greens over a season. That's 1 square foot. You have 20 of them. Layer 2. Mid-height. This is where your most productive annual crops live. Leafy greens, Swiss chard, compact tomato varieties, peppers. In square-foot gardening, which is essentially a formalized version of what medieval growers did intuitively, you can fit 4 full heads of lettuce or up to 16 radishes or 9 spinach plants in a single square foot. The key isn't the number of plants, it's succession planting. As one crop finishes, another goes in. Medieval growers did this naturally with the seasons. You do it deliberately. Layer 3. Vertical. This is where a balcony system truly separates itself from a ground-level garden. Your railing, your wall, any trellis you can mount, these become growing surface. Climbing beans, cucumbers, small fruited squash varieties, pole peas. A single climbing bean plant trained up a 1.5 meter support can yield between 500 grams and 1.5 kilograms of beans over a season, depending on the variety and conditions. Now put 5 of those along a railing. 6. Train. Them. Guide them. The wall itself becomes productive. Medieval castle gardens, documented in sources like the French poem Roman de la Rose, were specifically designed with walls in mind. The wall wasn't just a boundary, it was a trellis. It was a microclimate. South-facing walls absorb heat during the day and release it at night, extending the growing season in both directions. Layer 4. Containers on multiple levels. Hanging baskets, wall pockets, railing planters, stacked containers. Each one is growing surface that didn't exist before you put it there. Herbs, strawberries, cherry tomatoes. Compact, productive, no wasted space. And layer 5, the perennial base. This is the layer that changes everything over time. Here's something most gardening content won't tell you. A garden that is built around perennial plants doesn't just produce food. It gets easier every year. The roots deepen, the soil improves, the plants adapt to your specific microclimate. Year 2 is easier than Year 1. Year 3 is easier than Year 2. Some of the most critical plants for this foundation layer, the ones medieval growers depended on, the ones that appear repeatedly in historical records of cottage and monastery gardens, are almost completely unknown to modern gardeners. I've spent a lot of time recently going deep on exactly these plants, and I've put together a guide, a 121 pages, covering 7 of them in detail. Plants like Egyptian walking onion, which literally propagates itself and walks across your garden. Sea kale, which was harvested from English coastal gardens for centuries. Lovage, sorrel, asparagus, plants that you put in once and harvest from for decades. It's called 7 Forgotten Perennial Vegetables, and the link is in the description if you want to go deeper on this. For now, let's keep building the system. So what does this look like as actual numbers? Here's a conservative breakdown for a well-planted 2 square meter balcony system over 1 season. Ground layer containers, root crops, and leafy greens across roughly 4 to 6 square feet of horizontal space. Realistic yield, 3 to 5 kilograms across multiple harvests. Mid-height layer, tomatoes, peppers, chard. A single indeterminate cherry tomato plant trained vertically can produce 3 to 6 kilograms in a good season. 2 plants. That's potentially 10 kilograms from a vertical column that takes almost no horizontal space. Climbing layer, beans, peas, small cucumbers. 3 to 5 climbing. Plants along a railing, yielding conservatively 1 to 2 kilograms each over the season. Herbs, continuous harvest throughout the season. By weight, they're modest, but by caloric and culinary value, they punch far above their size. Added together honestly with the right plant selection, succession planting, and vertical use of space, And 20 kilograms is not just possible. It's conservative. This isn't a claim invented for a thumbnail. It's arithmetic. Let's be precise about this. Because precision matters. And because the internet is full of gardening content that is either wildly optimistic or suspiciously vague. Wide row planting, which is what dense container gardening essentially is, yields 2 to 3 times more per square foot than traditional row planting, according to research from Washington State University Extension. This isn't permaculture philosophy. This is horticulture data. The University of Massachusetts defines companion planting as growing 2 or more crops near each other to improve pest management, nutrient uptake, and overall yield. The Three Sisters system, corn, beans, squash grown together, is the most famous example. But the principle is universal. The more you layer, the more efficiently your space produces. Now here's the part that most people miss completely. Year 1 of a layered garden with perennials in it is your worst year. You're establishing roots. You're building soil structure. The perennials are putting energy downward, not into harvest yet. Year 2, the perennials begin producing seriously. The soil biology has started to develop. Your plants are adapted to your specific conditions. Year 3, you start to understand what medieval growers understood intuitively. A well-planted garden costs less effort every year, not more. The compost builds on itself. The perennial roots aerate the soil. The companion plants suppress weeds. The system becomes partially self-regulating. Compare this to what modern gardening asks of you. Buy new seeds every year. Buy fertilizer. Fight the same pests with the same pesticides. Replace soil. Start over. One system is designed for selling you things every year. The other is designed to free you from needing them. Now, I'm genuinely curious about something. Where are you right now in this? Do you already have a balcony garden? Even a small one? Are you still in the planning stage? Or are you just starting to think this might actually be possible for you? Drop it in the comments. Tell me your setup. Balcony, small yard, containers on a windowsill. Nothing yet. I read every single comment on this channel, and your specific situation might become the basis for a future video. Seriously, here's what I want to leave you with. The system we talked about today, layering, vertical growing, perennial anchors, guild planting, none of this is new. None of it was invented by a YouTube channel or a permaculture guru in the 1980s. It was worked out, slowly and practically, by people who had no backup plan, no grocery store, no emergency supply, just a small piece of ground next to their wall, and the knowledge that what grew there was what their family ate. Around the year 800, Charlemagne issued his famous list, 94 plants he wanted grown across his empire. But he wasn't teaching anyone anything they didn't already know. He was codifying what small growers had understood for generations, that a diverse, layered, perennial anchored garden is more resilient, more productive, and more sustainable than any monoculture you can plant. That knowledge survived for 1,000 years. Then industrial agriculture decided it wasn't profitable anymore. The good news is, it survived anyway. In old books, in seed libraries, in monastery records, and now, slowly, in channels like this one. If this kind of content is what you want to keep seeing, subscribe and share this with one person who you think is ready to hear it. That's genuinely how this channel grows. And this channel is trying to build something for the long term, just like the gardens we talk about. A few things if you want to go further. The guide I mentioned, 7 Forgotten Perennial Vegetables, goes deep on the plants that form the most durable foundation layer for exactly this kind of system. 121 pages, practical, historical context included. Link is in the description. And I'm building out the Hidden Soil blog alongside this channel. Written deep dives on plants, methods, and history. It's still growing, but there's already content there worth reading. Also in the description. Everything we do here is about recovering what was forgotten and making it usable again. A medieval peasant didn't wait for perfect conditions. He worked with what he had, in the space he had, with the knowledge he'd inherited. You have more space than you think. You have more time than you think. And now, you have the knowledge.